Good morning, SAM students, and good morning, pchemists. I wanted to get a quick morning Facebook Live to encourage you and to help this year get started in a great way. As we begin this new term, and especially this full year, 9-month, long term of the school year, I want you to think about this as a marathon, not a sprint. Don't try to cram before exams. Do a little bit every day. In my class, especially physical chemistry, we're going to have a problems notebook that you're going to have 10 pages a week. So about 2 pages a day of work on your own time to help you prepare each day. We're going to cover an enormous amount of material this year, especially in my class in physical chemistry. We're going to go from the smallest scale that you can imagine in energy, the Planck's constant, which is 10 to the minus 34 joules. And by the end of the year, in April and May, we're going to be working on a global scale of energy consumption, 425 exajoules, which is 10 to the 18 joules. That's an enormous range of energy, which will take us on an enormous range of distance scales. This is going to be an incredible year, and your perspective is going to go from the atomic to the global. One way to do that is to focus on lecture first, and this is applicable to all SAM students. Your professors have put a lot of effort into their lectures, and so that is the first place for you to go for the material. Focus on what they say in class. Stick closely to those notes. Then when you're studying on your own, work on the homework. See how the homework correlates to those notes. Then look at the book. Now, many times you'll have readings in the book to prepare for lecture, and that leads me to my next point, and that is the best thing you can do is not just prepare for an exam, but prepare for lecture. Get ahead of the professor. If you get ahead of the professor in your reading and in your work, you're going to be confused naturally. But when you come to class, those confusing points in your head have already been placed there, and lecture will actually be useful. Those questions will get answered in class. If you're not prepared for lecture, the lecture is going to be completely confusing to you. Then later you're going to try to study that material and you're going to forget what you heard in lecture. And so you're confused in lecture and you're confused when you're working on your own. If you get ahead of the professor, get ahead of the class, just a couple of days in the reading, then you're going to come to class with pre-programmed questions in your head, and then lecture is actually going to be useful. Next is don't be toxic. You cannot imagine how a small toxic attitude can bring the whole class down. My mother used to always say, if you don't have anything nice to say, say nothing at all. And so even if someone's trying to get you to join in a toxic attitude, just use my mom's phrase. Say, well, I really have nothing nice to say about that, so I'm not going to say anything. It's a great way to kind of shut down negativity. So don't be toxic, and don't be paralyzed by fear. I know a lot of people have a lot riding every semester on their grades. I like to think of Marcus Luttrell, where he said once he realized that he was in a firefight, that he was essentially dead, then he was free to act. So think about the worst thing that can happen. And in academics, the worst thing that can happen is that you fail the course. It's not that you die. You're not on a battlefield in that sense. And so the worst is not the worst that can possibly happen to you. And so just do your best. Don't focus on the losses, focus on the victories. And then lastly, in class, ask questions. I know that no one wants to stand out, but there's almost always a chance for questions. If you have been preparing for lecture and getting ahead, you're going to have questions that you want answered right away. And so write those down in your notes. And when that time comes for question and answer, raise your hand and say, I've got a question, and you refer to your notes. That way you're not stumbling over your words. And I know that your professors will appreciate that, and I also know that your classmates will as well. So let's have a great year. I teach 8 o'clock classes, so I'm ready to go. And hopefully when you wake up and if you see this, you'll be encouraged for your 9 and 10 o'clock classes. So let's give it a good shot, all right?